Hello, beautiful warriors. It is me, Caitlin Parker, and welcome to this episode of Inside the Mind of a PAH Warrior. In today's podcast, I am going to share a journal entry with you. The date of this entry was July 26, 2023, and it reads, "Here I am again. It's July 26 and currently 3:07 a.m. Tonight, I have tried everything to clear my mind and fall asleep, but my anxiety is weighing. I was starting to get bad chest pain and muscle soreness in my arms, and couldn't catch my breath and realized quickly that these were symptoms of anxiety, not my pulmonary hypertension. My body was actually giving me physical symptoms, warning me that I was about to have an anxiety before my mind did. It was crazy. I listened to my body and immediately put on my oxygen and sat up so my arms were completely down, because that is the only way I have found that works to get rid of my muscle aches in my arms. I then shut off the lights, lay down on my bed, and went to YouTube and played raining sounds mixed with soothing sound music, because that is one of my coping skills I can use to settle my mind. I wrapped myself up with blankets, put in my AirPods, and closed my eyes and focused my mind on the raining/soothing sounds instead of my racing thoughts. I wanted to share that coping skill with you guys in case you haven't used it, because it works wonders for me and is something positive I can do instead of getting overstimulated and cry or pull out my hair. So again, turn on some relaxing music, close your eyes, and really focus on the sounds you are hearing. And for me personally, the anxious thoughts that keep popping up in my head slowly disappear and my mind goes blank, and all I am focusing on is the music. It helps tremendously, and I hope you guys try it out if you don't already do it. Anyways, tonight is a different story, because I tried that coping skill, and after 4 hours of trying to fall asleep, I have had enough, and I feel like I need to go on to another coping skill I have, which is writing my thoughts down. So here we are. My thoughts will be all over the place and might be confusing to follow along, but I need to get them out of my head, so for me that is writing them down. Okay, now where to begin, lol. Right now in particular, I am having a hard time processing all my thoughts, because so much has happened within the last couple of weeks. I feel like my mind is just at full capacity, and I no longer can process anything, and I am struggling with coping with everything that is going on. I feel isolated and alone and feel like I have to go through this alone and process this alone, because I don't have anyone to vent to, because I am going through deep emotions right now and nobody can relate to the things I am going through. I do want to say that I had a therapy session and it went really well, and I feel like that is the one person who I can be truly honest with, and even though she can't relate to me, she gives me the best advice and helps me understand why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. I even told her today that I was really looking forward to talking to her, because I needed someone to vent to about my doctor's appointment and help me process my thoughts and emotions about it. I started out the session by saying I have been looking forward to our therapy session because I know I can just ramble out all my thoughts to you, and you put my thoughts into specific words or phrases that helps me understand and process what I'm truly feeling, and you make my blurry thoughts in my head and emotions make sense to me. I am truly thankful for that, because that is something that I have never had before, and you make my blurry thoughts in my head and emotions make sense to me. I am truly thankful for that, because that is something that I have never had before, and it makes processing my thoughts and emotions go quicker. And for me, that is important, because I feel like my life is a mess right now, and even today I have 3 major life changes that I need help going through, and I know that it will take time, but I feel like the process will be quicker with having her help. Okay, enough is enough. I need to bring up the 3 changes. The first one is my recent doctor's appointment. I always struggle right before doctor's appointments with having bad anxiety, and this doctor's appointment was no different. I also struggle with bad anxiety and depression after a doctor's appointment, and that's the mindset I'm in right now. I have so many thoughts racing in my mind about what happened at the appointment, and it normally takes months for me to process all my thoughts and deal with them and get over all the negative thoughts I have, which very quickly leads me into depression, and again, it takes months to get out of my depressive state of mind. If we backtrack a little, my last doctor's appointment was last November, and it's July right now. But anyways, about 3 weeks after my doctor's appointment, I was severely depressed and having bad anxiety, and my doctors have been pushing me for years to find a therapist, and I finally felt like it was time to reach out and find one after that appointment. So after the doctor's appointment, I found a good therapist, and side note, I'm still seeing her to this day. But anyways, after my doctor's appointment in November, it took a solid 2 months and 8 therapy sessions to finally fully process my thoughts and feelings. And she made all my thoughts and emotions finally make sense to me, and something just clicked inside my brain, and I finally found the reason why I get anxiety going to doctor's appointments, and why I have a hard time going to my appointments, and why I get severely depressed afterwards. And before seeing my therapist, I never understood why I was feeling those feelings, but now I do, and I'm able to cope with those hard feelings, and I was never able to before. I will always remember this conversation I had with her in one of my very first couple of sessions. After telling her my previous doctor's experiences, she asked me this question: when was the last time you went to the doctors and got good news? And it took me a minute to figure it out, but I finally said, in 2016, and that is when I got told I was getting severely worse and my doctors wanted to start me on sub-Q Remodulin, and you guys all know how well that turned out for me. But now I just had a random thought, and it was crazy because I got diagnosed when I was 8 and was put on tadalafil and ambrisentan, and for the first 8 years of treatment, that was all I was taking, and from 2008 to 2016, as weird as this may sound, I actually loved going to the doctors because I could do all the tests they wanted me to, and it was easy for me to do. Now it's 2016, and all of a sudden I wake up from a heart cath. At this time, I was required to do every 2 years, and when I woke up, my doctors had said the pressures in my lungs were getting too high, and the tadalafil and ambrisentan were not enough for me to be on alone, and that I needed to add another medication, and so I did. And I was on that medication for 2 years before I had enough and stopped the medication. If you want to hear in full detail on why those 2 years were hard on me and why the sub-Q didn't work out for me, I did a story time on it in a YouTube video called Surviving 11 Years with Pulmonary Arterial Hypertension, and also in my second podcast episode titled My PAH Story. Anyways, looking back over the years, I realized that I stopped looking forward to doctor's appointments starting in 2016 because that was really the first time I ever got bad news, and I was old enough to realize what was happening, and after that specific appointment, everything started going downhill, and it has been one battle after another. I do also want to give out a timeline so this story will make sense. So from 2008, the year I was diagnosed, to 2016, all the memories from the hospital were positive, and honestly, I was too young and don't remember much of that time period in my life. Most of the things in my life that are hospital related, my brain has blocked out, and that's just a trauma response because it was too much for me to handle, so my brain blocked it out. But now the time period is 2016 to 2018, and that was my sub-Q time period. And I'm going to be honest and say again, my brain has blocked out a lot of that time as well. I even had a therapy session where she wanted me to try EMDR, which if you don't know what that is, I'm going to explain it to you guys. I actually just now looked it up to help me explain what it is. So Google says, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, commonly known as EMDR, is a mental health therapy method. EMDR treats mental health conditions that happen because of memories from traumatic events in your past. It's best known for its role in treating post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. It's a therapy method therapists use to help people with traumatic memories and is best known for its use in treating PTSD. EMDR instead focuses on changing the emotions, thoughts, or behaviors that result from a distressing experience, in parentheses, trauma. This allows your brain to resume a natural healing process. So anyways, during one of my early therapy sessions, my therapist tried using the EMDR strategy, and I had to close my eyes and try to go back and relive the moment of me waking up from the heart cath and my doctors telling me I need to now be on sub-Q. But when I closed my eyes and tried to go back and picture it, my mind was black. And for the life of me, I couldn't see that event or even try to picture it. And we retried it like 3 times that session, but every time my mind would just stay black, and she said your brain is still blocking this traumatic event and traumatic time in your life, and that is your brain's way of protecting you and saying you are not ready to go back and relive that time. So for now, those 2 years are black, and my brain has completely blocked it out. So now it makes sense that when my doctors ask me why I don't want to be on sub-Q, I can't give them a full answer and can't explain why, because I have PTSD from that time period, and my brain is blocking those memories. Then from 2018 to 2021, nothing major happened that I can remember. I stopped the sub-Q Remodulin therapy and only had to be on ambrisentan and tadalafil. And even to this day, those are the only 2 medications I take because I refuse to do any medications like the sub-Q, and the only options I have now are just different versions of the sub-Q. One was Tyvaso, which is the same medication as the sub-Q pump, but it is in an inhaler form, but I quickly was having the same side effects and stopped it after about 4 months of being on it, because I refused to feel the same way I did when I was on the pump. So then now it's 2021, and that was the year I passed out 2 times in under 2 weeks, and then I went through heart surgery. Keep in mind that I went through heart surgery awake because the doctors told me it was too dangerous for me to be fully under anesthesia. I did have numbing cream and my body was numb, but I could still feel everything inside of me and the tubes and the catheters going from my groin area to my heart, because they wanted to place a small hole in my heart to help the blood flow better from my left to my right side of my heart. Again, if you want the full version of that story, watch the video, Life Update, I Had Heart Surgery plus 4th of July special. Because of course, on top of this traumatic time in my life, it just had to be over the 4th of July. So now I get bad feelings when it comes to the beginning of summer because it restores the bad memories I have from that 2021 beginning of summer. So like I said, in 2021, I passed out 2 times in under 2 weeks and then had heart surgery to prevent me from passing out, which by the way has worked, because I have been close to passing out, but never actually passed out since 2021. 2022 was kind of a chill year and nothing big happened that I can recall. In 2022, I was basically just increasingly getting worse, and it took a while for me to fully heal and process everything that happened in 2021. Then now it's 2023 and everything in my life has fallen apart, and I can't keep up with all the changes that have happened because honestly I have gone through so many major life changes, and now it seems like every week something is changing and I'm getting anxiety over it, and before I can fully process and move on with one thing, another thing pops up. I will quickly just name the life changes to make this all make sense. I will do a podcast later for each of those topics, but for right now, I haven't fully processed, healed, or moved on from any of these topics, so I can't fully speak on it until I have. But starting in January, I had to move back in with my parents. Then my PH was getting worse to the point where I was really struggling with going to work every day, so I put in my resignation letter in April. So I lost my dream job and made the tough decision that it was time for me to retire at age 23, which that in itself is just so crazy to me, and there will be a podcast coming on that topic soon. But like I said, I can't speak on that topic right now because I'm not done with the grieving stage yet, and I haven't accepted it and moved forward. But when I do, there will be a podcast on having to retire at age 23, which you guys, even saying that out loud to this day, just shocks me, and it's hard to wrap my mind around that. Then, while all that is going on, my parents bought property and we had to sell our house. So right when I was just starting to feel okay and accept my new normal and get into a good routine, the house was up for sale. I felt like I was back to square one. I now have to start processing moving again, just when I felt normal again, and was finally done processing the first moving event. 3 months later, here I am moving again, and the grieving cycle continues. So let's stop and pause for a minute and go back to the time period. In January, I moved in with my parents, which was hard to accept that my daily PAH symptoms were that bad that I needed help with everyday tasks. A month later, again, my PH symptoms worsened to the point I knew I wasn't able to work for much longer and had to grieve not only losing my dream job due to my chronic illness, but having to quit working and retire at the age 23. Then, a month later, guess what? Surprise! My parents bought land and are putting the house up on the market. So now I'm going to have to move twice in less than 6 months. But guess what? It gets better. Then a month later, my doctors tell me that it's time for me to schedule an appointment. And like I've said before, I get very bad depression and anxiety over it for weeks before the doctor's appointment and weeks after the doctor's appointment. So then I get to start the anxiety train all over again and prepare myself for a doctor's appointment, which they called me in May, and then my doctor's appointment was in July. And you guys, that's a whole nother story on its own. They only had 2 days open in June for me to schedule a doctor's appointment. And just guess what those days were. If you guessed my birthday weekend and Father's Day weekend, you are correct. So obviously, I'm not going to schedule a doctor's appointment on those dates. So then we get to July, and literally, you guys, the first day she suggests is the 4th of July weekend. I'm like, you can't be serious. I obviously didn't say that to her, but I was thinking it. I just politely declined that date too. And then she was like, okay, we can do it for July 21st. And I accepted that date because it wasn't around a holiday and it wasn't around my birthday. So I was okay with it because it was just a random date. And for context, my doctors only see patients on Mondays and Fridays. So my mom takes me to all my doctor's appointments, and Fridays work better for her. So I told the lady that I can only do Fridays. So there wasn't too many Fridays he had available. But immediately after that phone call, I called my mom and told her that the scheduling lady called me to make an appointment for June. And I told my mom, I'm like, guess what day they wanted me to make an appointment for? And she was like, your birthday? And I said, ding, 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 yep. And on Father's Day weekend. So for both of those days, my appointments would have been on a Friday, and my birthday was the next day, which was on Saturday. And then again, my appointment would be on Friday, and Father's Day was that weekend on a Sunday. And then for the 4th of July weekend, my doctor's appointments would have been on a Friday, and the 4th of July was on Tuesday. So I told my mom all of this, and then I said, so I scheduled it for July 21st because that was a random day and had no significance for me. And then I said, so that's why my doctor's appointment is scheduled for 2 months away. Because remember, they called me in the beginning of May, and I scheduled my appointment for the end of July. So then I told my mom I wasn't going to let my doctors ruin my birthday or ruin the holidays for me, because like I said before, I get bad anxiety and depression for weeks and even months before and after an appointment. So I wasn't going to allow my chronic illness to ruin another thing in my life. And my mom just said, I don't blame you. I know how hard your doctor's appointments are on you physically and mentally. So at this point, it's May, and I was flooded with emotions about my upcoming doctor's appointment and had to start processing my emotions from that while still processing everything else. And then comes June, and y'all, June was a tough month. On June 8th, it was my last day of work, so I was all up in my head with emotions, and to this day, a month later, my mind still hasn't registered yet that I won't be going back to work in August. Because again, I was working at Summit Elementary, so right now, my mind is thinking, okay, it's summer break. So I think it won't hit me until August, and it's like, okay, no, you're not on summer break, and no, you're not going back to work. So now it's still June, we've sold our house, and our move-out date was June 31st. So while I was having deep emotions about losing my ability to work, I now have to start processing that I'll have to move again. And it's only been 6 months since I last moved. So at this point, my brain capacity is at like 80% with everything that has happened from January to June. Our move-out date was June 31st, but we actually moved out of our house by like June 9th. So it was just a crazy time. And then June 11th was my birthday, so I decided that I wanted to go down to Denver for my birthday. And then after that, I spent a full week in Denver, so I came back June 17th, which was a Friday, and then that Sunday was Father's Day. And that weekend, we were fully moved into the camper. And that's when my troubles really begin, because I only lasted 3 weeks in the camper before I had to move out of the camper and move in with my grandma. So you guys, in just 7 months, I have moved 3 times, which is just crazy and really hard for someone who doesn't deal with change very well. And as someone who needs weeks or even months to fully process one thing changing in my life, imagine how I'm feeling with this much change so fast. Quick update, not handling it very well. So okay, I went on a side note. So my parents and I moved into the camper, and I quickly realized that my body and the state I am in with my pulmonary hypertension, living in the camper, was making my daily life challenging. The first thing I noticed was that it was getting harder for me to move around the camper, and I was getting out of breath a lot faster than I previously had, and it was taking longer and longer for me to be able to catch my breath. In order to use the bathroom, I had to walk up 2 steep steps, and as you guys know, I just can't do stairs at all. And also, to let my dog out to use the bathroom, I also had to climb down 2 steps to get out of the camper. So in reality, I was walking up and down around 20 stairs a day, and that just became too hard on my body. My PAH symptoms were actually getting worse during those 3 weeks, and it got to the point where I was getting out of breath so easily and not being able to catch my breath for a long time afterwards that I was starting to get panic attacks almost daily for at least 2 weeks straight. I also took 2 showers while I was there, and I already struggle as it is taking a shower in a normal shower. Now just imagine the shower 20 times smaller, and that's the size of the shower in the camper. So actually, one of the first really bad panic attacks I had while living in the camper was while I was taking a shower, because I got overwhelmed while I was in the shower because I was struggling with all the tasks that you need to do while taking a shower, and it was hot, so I was overheating, and then I was losing my breath, and then it was taking me longer to get my breath back, so that created panic for me, and I had a bad panic attack while I was in the shower, and that was one of the final things to happen to me before I said, okay, I just can't do this anymore. I can't live in the camper and continue to have daily panic attacks, and I could feel my PAH getting worse because I was having to climb up and down stairs multiple times a day, and stairs are one of the biggest things I struggle with, and have been struggling with it for 2 years. So after that panic attack during the shower, my next therapy session was about 5 days after that. My therapist was the first person I told that I could no longer live in the camper and was really struggling, and I didn't know how to tell my mom that I didn't want to live in the camper anymore because I didn't want to hurt her. And it's not like I just don't want to live in the camper. I was just struggling to live in the camper, and it was making my daily life worse. I had 2 therapy sessions where I talked about how bad and frequent my panic attacks were getting and my thoughts about no longer being able to live in the camper and the intense anxiety I was getting over the thought of me having to have the conversation with my mom. My therapist gave me the words I needed to help me bring up the conversation and to help me talk to my mom about not living in the camper anymore and going to live with my grandma. So actually, after that therapy session, I was like, okay, the time is now. I need to do this. And when my mom came home from work, she asked me how therapy went, and I said it went good, and I started to tear up because I was too afraid to tell her what I wanted to say. And she just said, "Are you okay? I can see something is on your mind." And I just cried harder, and I said, "I don't want to hurt your feelings." My therapist and I talked about me moving in with Grandma, because with the stairs, it's getting too hard for me to live out here in the camper. And she just hugged me and said, "Caitlin, don't ever worry about not opening up to me because you think it will hurt my feelings." She then said, "I want to do what is best for you and what will make your life easier." And I just took a sigh of relief because I was so worried about what she was going to say, and all she said was positive things. It was a big weight off my shoulder, and I felt like I could breathe again. I was also struggling with isolation as well because I was alone for 21 hours a day because my parents would go to work at 6 a.m., but I wouldn't wake up till 9 a.m., so I didn't see them in the morning. Then they would come home around 5 p.m. and go to bed at 8:30 p.m. So I was only seeing and interacting with my parents for 3 hours a day. So I felt alone, like I was trapped in a box 21 hours a day. That was also hard on my mental health. About a week and a half later, I moved in with my grandma, and that has made my daily life a lot easier because my grandma doesn't work, so she is with me all day and helps me out with the little things that if I did myself would take up all my energy. So my PAH symptoms went back to normal, and I have been living with her for about 2.5 weeks now, and I haven't had a panic attack, which is very major for me. I have a quick story to tell you guys now. So the first time I took a shower at my grandma's house, it went very smoothly, and I didn't get out of breath as bad as I normally do. So I took that as a big win. So after the shower, I called my mom and said, "I just needed to call you and tell you this because you're the only person that would be happy about this or understand why I am happy about this. But I just took a shower and it went really well. I didn't get out of breath like I normally do, and it was actually a good shower where I didn't feel just totally exhausted afterwards. And most importantly, I didn't have a panic attack." And she was very happy and said that it makes me happy to hear that it went well. And then that was pretty much where the conversation ended. So I just said, okay, well, that's all I needed to tell you. I just needed to tell someone because that was the first good shower I have had in months, and I know you are the only person that would understand why I was happy about that or why it was such a big deal for me. And she said, yes, I am happy to hear that. So now I am currently living with my grandma and feel stabilized because I know I'm not moving anytime soon. I don't have to deal with any stairs. I haven't had a panic attack since I moved here, and I'm getting help all throughout the day, and now my PAH symptoms are getting back to how they were before I moved in the camper, which I'm not saying that they were good to begin with, but I can definitely feel a shift because it's not taking me days to recover from an outing like it was when I was in the camper. It's just an overall better experience for me. I do want to say though that my bad camper experience is not because of my parents. It is strictly only because of my chronic illness. If I could go upstairs daily and not have showers affect me the way they do, I would still be living in the camper. I want to be with my parents living out on our property in the camper, but with my PAH, I just can't live in a camper. You guys, it's currently 6:40 a.m. and I'm starting to get sleepy, but this has just cleared my mind so much, and I am really glad I started writing this out. I feel like I was able to let go of a lot of things today and free up the space inside my head. I think for this podcast episode, that's all I want to talk about. I will talk about my July doctor's appointment in another episode because right now it's too soon to open up and talk about, and I haven't had enough time to collect my thoughts and process my emotions from that appointment. So that topic will be coming up in a later podcast. I know this podcast was all over the place, and I honestly don't know how I ended up explaining what my life has been like for the last 7 months, but I am glad it went in this direction, because as you guys can tell, everything that has happened lately is still weighing heavily on my mind, and it has felt so good to open up and let all those thoughts out. With that being said, this PAH warrior is signing off. Bye guys, peace.